So the next layer I want to add is by using the diffuse PSTF that we had here. Basically, I think I already explained to you guys how it works, so don't need to explain it too much, but as you can see, we have our black and white output here. If we drag this out to, you guessed it, mix node again, and you can just type in multiply here and select the one that says mix and multiply. And so if you multiply it by this mask, I guess you could call it, we now have some actual lighting going on. So as you can see, if you rotate your sunlight, it's like that. So we should probably shade this smooth so that it's a bit more nice looking. And then obviously as you drag these ramps, you can affect how strong or not strong you want it to be. So if I hit Control G, I can put it into a group. We'll call this diffuse light. And then what I want to do here is, well, actually something I should tell you is you don't have to use constant. If you want to use linear, you could use linear. What we get then is we get a more smooth thing. If you don't want to use tune shading, you don't have to. It's totally up to you guys. And for something like diffuse lighting, it's definitely something you want to make custom per object, so I'm going to drag out the factor here. Now another one that's really similar is we can make a reflection. So the way I do that is by using the same exact setup but using a glossy BSTF. And if we look at what this is doing, we have basically a glossy BSTF, which is like a shiny shader, and then we do the same exact process, and we can get a sort of like specular. Basically drag this slider and for how big you want it to be, or you could use linear if you want. If you want it to be a more like reflective, like actually reflective, unstylized type of thing. Once again, you can actually, if you want, use a map range node instead of a color ramp and set it to step linear, and then from there you could actually have like a sort of gradient for it if that's like what you want to do. I think it looks kind of hideous though personally, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use a regular color, or actually let me add that back. I just want to show you guys that everything that the color ramp node can do, the map range can basically do, besides for actually use color. So if we step the steps really low, we can just basically have it as the same thing we had before. And if you adjust the roughness value, it'll change the actual shader, how reflective it is. And so that's going to update in the map range as well. So drag out a mix node again and plug this into the fact. Then as you can probably guess, the B value is going to be whatever we want it to be. And you can probably drag in, maybe use a hue saturation value. So you can make it whatever color you want pretty much. And by the way, when you're adjusting the hue saturation value node, for some reason it doesn't let you slide it over 2. So you have to actually type in like 20 or whatever you want. And now if we select all this, we could hit Control G, put it into a group, and call it reflection. And I guess this should be something customizable, so we'll drag out everything, the hue, saturation, the value as well. And I guess you could put the roughness here too. And the from min, which is important. The steps as well. You know, why don't we just put like all of this? Okay, so that makes it pretty complex, but yeah, as you can see now, it's pretty cool. You could just slide if you want it to be more smooth. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. I don't like how harsh the diffuse light is, so I'm going to just kind of bring it back a lot. Yeah, I guess it's fine actually, it's not that bad. I guess we'll just disable it for now. Because, by the way, now that I think about it, for the diffuse light here, we could also have used the map range node if you wanted to do that. Yeah, I think we should do it actually. Map range is just cool. Switch it to step linear. And I think instead of using multiply, we could set it to mix. Let's cut this factor connection because we want to use this step gradient mask as the fact itself, and cut it out from B as well. Then what we want to do is, like we did with the reflection mask, we just want to copy what we did here basically. I should have done this initially, but you know, there's multiple ways to do things, and I think this is a bit of a better way. It gives you more control if that's what you're after. But the other way we did it earlier is good too, but it's just too simple, I think. I'm trying to show you guys like everything, like how this works. So we could delete this factor input here because we don't need it anymore, and drag out the input to B, add a hue saturation value node, and yeah, now we can use these as inputs. Okay, well, one more thing we should probably add is another hue saturation value node for the A. So now we can adjust both the top and the bottom. Whoops. So if we slide down here, we can adjust this one, and obviously we have these that we plugged out here too, which we can also adjust for the light part of the gradient, right? So once again, we have black here, white here. Black is A, white is B. So if we drag down here, then these parts become darker, and if we drag down, it's connected here, but basically if we were to drag down here, then this part would become darker because this is connected to B. So that's how this all works basically. Once again, message me if you don't understand. I hope it all makes sense. I hope as you're doing this, you're getting the hang of it, because that's what's important. And obviously we could, this kind of gets kind of ridiculous, but we could drag these out here. And now, whoops. Now we have an absolutely insane node with like insane levels of customization. So it's up to you how you want to do it exactly. One thing I recommend if you do it this way is, as you can see, when we decrease the value here, it decreases everything here as well, which might not exactly be what you want. So if you tab in, you can play around with like the 2 max value and bring it up here so that when we drag this down, it doesn't like darken like absolutely everything. This part stays the same. I know it's starting to get a bit confusing. It doesn't have to be though. As you can see, before what we did was we just used multiply with the diffuse PSTF and the color ramp, which is a perfectly good method to use. To be honest, that's normally what I do. Normally I'll never make like something this complicated, but the reason I wanted to is because I think it's good for learning, and it's also good because I want you guys to have like all the material. Anyways, I'm going to mute the diffuse light layer with the M key for now. I think it's just a bit excessive. So last 2 things I want to add are really easy, but they're like probably the coolest in my opinion, which are I like to call it circular lighting. Basically what we do is we add a gradient texture, put it on a quadratic sphere, or just regular sphere. Basically the difference is that quadratic sphere is a bit smoother than regular sphere. So as you can see, if I set it to quadratic sphere, it's just a bit smoother. So I like to use quadratic sphere, and then I hit Control T, switch it to object coordinates, add an object, and add an empty sphere, or like anything you want. It can be literally any object, but adding an empty is cool. So then we select this, and now if we look at the sphere, it'll show up whenever the empty is close to it. So when I started using this for lighting, it was just like amazing, because it's just so dynamic. You could scale, you could rotate, all of it is just completely customizable. But yeah, the way this works is very simple. You could probably guess at this point. Plug this in, add a hue saturation value here and here, use this as the fact, and then we now have a proximity thing where if let's say I increase it for B is the light areas, so it's going to be where the sphere itself is. So if I set it to like 2, as you can see now, we have a light that's just kind of there. So yeah, it's just a really cool way to do your lighting. So I'm going to put this all into its own group, and you could drag all these out if you want, but I'm just going to drag the value settings here so that we can customize them from outside. And yeah, it's just a really, really awesome thing. Probably my favorite layer of them all. And I'm going to call this main light. And now what we want to do is pretty much the exact same thing, but this is going to be for what I like to call like a warm light, or a secondary light, or a rim light, or whatever you want it to be. So let's add the mapping nodes again with Control T, switch to quadratic sphere, object coordinates, add an empty sphere, and if you hit F2 you can rename it to like warm light, and just select it, drag this out to a mix node. This time it's going to be a little bit different though. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is using the quadratic sphere this time with this one. We wanted to have like a soft light effect where it gives it a nice like orange or blue or whatever light you want it to be. Let's switch this to soft light. Let's inspect this really quickly. I'm not doing anything right now, but if we drag in, sorry, don't put it on B, put it on fact, so that the white parts of the sphere are going to be the V values, and the A is just going to be the original, like what we had before. So as you can see, it hasn't done anything, but if we then bring this forward, well, first let's change the color here to something like orange, and make sure you set the value really high, set it to like 20. So now if you bring this here, really cool, right? You have a nice, like, strong light effect here. The thing is, I'm going to warn you, is that this does not always work perfectly. And actually I was frustrated a while trying to find a fix for this. I'll show you on screen now. Basically, if you're making a character model or anything complex like that, you'll get this issue where when you drag your warm light in, it kind of messes up all the colors. So the way to fix that is by adding a hue saturation value node beforehand and then decreasing it. So let me show you here. We have a hue saturation value here. If we decrease it, it would make it so that it actually works. Here we don't really have any issue, so we don't have to do it, but I'm just going to add it here anyways. And so let's throw this into a group. Call it warm light. And I'm going to drag the color out here, so we could set it to be like 40 or 50 or whatever. There's one other interesting concept about using this when you're doing like a character or something, anything that's more complicated than a cube, which is the soft light. The way it works is it kind of like intrudes a lot on a lot of the details. So as you can see on the face here, it intrudes on a lot of the details, but there's a way I did that you could actually fix this. And it's basically by either drawing or just using a mask that will occlude certain areas from the power of the sphere. So that sounds like very wizardly, but it's not that complicated. Basically, if we think about it logically, we have our sphere, right? And we're moving it around. Let's say I don't want it to be like here, for example, or just like anywhere. Let's say like there's a patch here that I don't want the sphere to affect. Well, that's actually very easy, because all we have to do is take our quadratic sphere output here. We just want to multiply it by the mask that we draw, pretty much. So let me show you how it works. Basically, if we add a mix node, set it to multiply, put it here, and set this to 1. I want to drag out this B value for this color here, because we're going to use it as the actual image texture. So as you can see right now, all it's doing is just multiplying by this color here, this solid color, so it's not really doing anything. But what we do want to do is essentially, what you want to do is you want to draw a mask that will exclude anything that's dark, at least like partially, from the power of the warm light, right? So for example, here on the face, I excluded the lips and like eye area and the nose, and the parts that are basically darker on the face. If you were to look at a grayscale image of the face, I basically just excluded the parts that are darker, right? Because for some reason soft light just like messes up the areas that are darker. There's a couple ways to do this. You can draw it by hand. I'll show you that really quickly how to do that. I'll make it like cheap, just 1024. And I want to set it to white, because remember we're going to multiply. Since it's white, white is 1, right? White is 1, so when we multiply by white, as we're using here, when we multiply by white, we're multiplying by 1, so it's not doing anything, right? And that's what we want, because then we can just draw our areas with black that we want to be 0 or like 0.5 or whatever. And now you could have areas that are excluded from the warm light. So that's one way of doing it. Another way I like to do it is by using what we already have. So that makes absolutely no sense. So here's what I mean. Basically, we already have a model that's been textured and everything. And what we could do is we could drag out this result here before the warm light, type in color ramp to grayscale it, and then use this grayscale version as the mask itself. So when we use this, obviously these areas here are going to be barely affected at all because they're darker by the warm light, and these areas will be affected more. So if we plug that in, Naturally, since everything is below 1, we're going to be weakening the power of the warm light. So you're going to have to set this to a really high value, like 700. But now the point is, if you drag it down here, it's not as powerful anymore. So both of these methods work. And oh yeah, by the way, I should have told you, instead of increasing this to like 700, which is a bit silly, what we should have done is you drag this white flag here. You drag it up so that it becomes more like lenient, right? Now everything's a lot whiter, these dark areas aren't as dark. And this is what I always do when I'm using this method, is I'll drag this white flag to here. And then you can drag the black as well if you want it to be aggressive like that. But you don't, it doesn't have to be that. So yeah, as you can see now, we have perfectly working warm light. It doesn't affect the bottom. And it just works awesomely. Yeah, remember this part of dragging this flag. I don't know why I didn't tell you immediately, but yeah, it's extremely important. Because otherwise it's not gonna be cool. So if we add a solidify modifier here, set offset to 1. This is basically just kind of like a process for doing it. I've kind of like memorized it at this point, so I just do it instinctively, but offset sets to 1, turn off fill, normals turn on flip, materials type in -100. Now what this is going to do is if we add another material here, click on this arrow key to put it at the top, and as you can see, everything got messed up. So what you want to do is click on new material, and delete this, add an RGB and just set it to whatever color you want. Like if you want black or dark red, I usually use, set it there, and scroll down here and turn on backface culling. And now if you look closely, if you increase the thickness, we have an outline. One thing you have to be careful of though is if you try to do this with a flat object, let me just copy materials and modifiers here. Okay, so let's say we have a flat object here. If you try and do it on this, as you can see, it doesn't really do anything. And the reason why is you have to add another solidify modifier before it. And you don't have to change any settings here, but just add one before, and as you can see, it fixes the issue. And now we have a nice outline here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, with this method, there's just like a million different ways to use it. It can get like as complex as you want it to be. My advice would be try and keep it as simple as possible, but if you need more complexity, then add more complexity. I showed you how to do like more complex things here, but ultimately when you're making any art, you know, it's just about making something that looks good. It's not about like these technical features. They're important, but trust me, you'll get to a point where the technical features don't feel like anything to you anymore, and it's just kind of like, how do you say it, muscle memory. What matters more is that you're able to actually observe properly, and from that make things that look nice. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this. Thank you for watching. More is to come, hopefully.